I just got done plowing snow with my Bobcat S220. I bought this about 10 years ago, mainly for handling my logs for the sawmill. I've been using the Komatsu PC30 excavator, and that was working, but I was kind of exceeding its limits on that. It was stretching it pretty far to use it on some of the logs I was using put on the sawmill. And I'd actually looking for a tractor, but to get a tractor with capability to handle the size of the logs that I do, I'd have needed a pretty big tractor, and I don't really have a whole lot of room to maneuver one in. Well, I got to looking at the skid steers, and for the power of the skid steer, I could get a lot more skid steer than I could tractor for the same amount of money, and it's more compact and gets around better into these tight spots. On the Bobcats, I don't know if the other skid steers do that or not, but the Bobcats, the drive chain and stuff, the way it's set up, the belly pan goes way down, and it's only got about 3 or 4 inches of clearance on the bottom. So it's not very handy in soft ground or with snow as far as that goes. It gets high centered pretty easy. Well, I was looking for something to make it a little more usable in the soft ground, because that's what we have around here is soft ground. So I got a set of these McLaren tracks to put on it, and they are incredible. The utility they add to the machine, they make a big difference in it. It's still not perfect, but it makes a big difference. And then the other thing that it does is it transfers a lot more power to the wheels, or usable power, I should say, to the wheels. The power still goes to it, but it winds up spinning. But like for spreading rock and gravel and things like that and digging, without them, the wheels will spin and you won't be able to use the full amount of power on the machine. With the tracks on there, it'll kill the machine if you dig into something hard before it'll spin. I've been really happy with that. And we started getting snow here a month or so ago, and I've been plowing snow with it. I kind of wanted to see how it was going to work out on the snow. I've used tracked machines a lot on the snow. I started out running bulldozers plowing snow when I was about 15 years old, and they work pretty good. I've built a lot of snow roads, plowed snow with them, built a lot of snow roads, and then worked with them a lot in the dirt, skidding logs and building road and stuff, and I kind of know a little bit about them. They work real good in the snow and stuff. The bad part of track machines is on ice, because they transfer so much weight over such a wide area. The footprint of it is foot-pounds per inch is a lot lower, and then they have steel grousers on them, and they can act just like skate. And so when you get on ice in them, they have a tendency to spin a lot and can get kind of helpless. But if you get on a side hill or on a hill, man, they can take off with you like a shot and just go sliding pretty much like on a carnival ride. So I was testing these out to see how they've worked, and they work pretty good so far. They float pretty good on the snow, and they push a lot of snow. But it's starting to get down on the ice. I can feel them start to spin and stuff a little bit. They've got 3 other problems with them. Now, one of the things that's a little bit of a problem is that the tracks are wider than the bucket and the blade, which is not too big of a deal for just straight plowing, but when you start trying to go to an edge and cut a nice clean edge, the tracks get over into the unbroken snow and pull it over underneath the tracks, and then that humps that side up, and you wind up at an angle. And so it digs in on one side, and the other side you won't be able to get down on it, and then it packs it down hard. Now, the other problem that I ran into on it, the snow builds up inside the track, and on a track machine like a bulldozer, especially if they've been set up for running in snow, they'll have relief holes in the tracks, and they're fairly narrow with a lot of high pressure, and the sprockets and the drive wheels will push the snow out of the track. On this is made to go around those tires, and so what happens is that snow builds up inside the track. The tires compact it down inside the tracks. The first problem I had with it was when it got cold, and that stuff was packed down in there pretty tight, and it froze hard, and it just tightened those tracks up piano wire tight. I don't think I could have got them off, because I couldn't have tightened them up, used the track tightener to tighten them up to get them off. But it warmed up, and I was able to beat that ice out of there. But then comes the second problem. Again, that snow and ice builds up inside the tracks, and you got to run them loose so they don't get too tight. Then the tires start spinning inside the tracks. And now we're starting to get ice build up here on the driveway, and I'm starting to lose traction with them. They start spinning and whatnot. So we're taking the tracks off now, and we're going to put the tire chains on. The tire chains will work a little bit better. Well, they'll be quite a bit better because they put a lot more weight down on the chain, on the grip on the chain and whatnot, and dig in a lot better into the ice and stuff, so they won't spin as much. And we'll turn those wheels around, put them around the way they're supposed to go, and then they'll be inside of the width of the implements that we run on the machine, inside of the bucket and inside of the snow blade. So that's what we're doing now. We've got the one track loosened up, and my son Carl's over there working on getting the other one off. We'll get those off, get those out of the way, and then we'll move it over in front of the shop and swap those wheels around, put the tire chains on. Probably won't have to use this now for a few days as it's clearing up. Just got a few clouds now. It's supposed to get down really cold, so shouldn't have to be plowing snow again for a while. This is one of the problems with using the tracks for plowing snow. You see the tracks were wider than the bucket on the machine. So when we go here trying to cut an edge like this, the tracks reach over into the snow pile, into the snowbank, and pull the snow over underneath the track, which builds up underneath the track and raises it up so you can't get the bucket down and make a nice clean cut down there. So what happens is you try to cut down with the bucket and it's at an angle, the machine's at an angle, so it's cutting deeper on the inside than it is on the outside, and it just keeps getting worse and worse the more you do that. Anyway, that's one of the problems with using the tracks on the machine and the wider tires on the machine. That's really defined here where I was pushing the snow through this narrower area. As I go through on the one side, it builds up underneath the tracks and gets packed down there. On the other side it does the same thing. In the middle you wind up with a big trough going through there. The more you try to fix it, the worse it gets. Well, I've got the tracks off. It makes it a little easier to see what's going on here with these. You've got ridges here that's supposed to interact with the lugs on the tires, and the snow ice is built up in there around those, and it builds up on these bars that go across in here. You can't see it a little bit there, and so here we go. Oh, it's froze down. Yeah, here we go. Builds up on this bar that goes across there and in these lugs. And so the tires, when it's warm like it was yesterday when I was plowing snow, that builds up in there, and then the tires just spin inside the tracks, because you have to keep the tracks fairly loose, because when it's cold out, this is what happens here. That ice builds up in here in the tires, in the tracks, and it builds up on all sides of it. You can see it here, here, and here. It did that on all sides of it, and then it tightens the tracks up so tight that it's kind of scary, and they're too tight to get off. The tracks were working okay. They get up on top of the snow and they give you pretty good traction on the snow, but when it starts coming to the ice, it builds up. Ice builds up inside the tracks and tightens them up, and then when I finally get them to break loose, then the tracks are loose and the tires spin inside of them. The grousers here are not as pronounced as they are on some track machines. This is the bar here called the grouser, and that kind of was digging into the ice and breaking it up a little bit and giving me some traction. But once the ice starts getting really hard like it is now, when it gets packed in real good and it gets cold, then those just get slippery and they just start spinning on the ice, sliding sideways and stuff like that. Another thing that they did, it kind of left a mess like that, because when they break the ice up and chunk it up, then you just can't get it cleaned up, so you always wind up with you never get a polished look on what you're cleaning up. They also break through and pull up some of the gravel out of the driveway underneath and loosen it up, and that was one of the problems I had with them. They're great for spreading the rock out and stuff on the driveway. The gravel really made a big difference in the machine doing that. But we never could pack the gravel in, because those things constantly kept it stirred up and chewed up and soft. That was okay during the summertime, but once we start getting plowing snow, then it makes it kind of bad, because it's picking that gravel up and I didn't really want to shove all that gravel over the bank when I was plowing snow. Anyway, that's why we wound up taking the tracks off for the winter time for the snow. Like I say, they really help push hard on the snow and push good on the snow when it's loose snow. But once it starts freezing up, they can kind of become a little bit of a problem.